The Silent Colony. The communication array aboard the EHS Meridian crackled with static as it approached the outer rim of the Kepler 442 system. Captain James Rodriguez had been expecting routine chatter from New Haven Colony, the usual requests for supply updates and progress reports on their agricultural research. Instead, there was only silence stretching across the void like a cold shroud. New Haven had been humanity's pride, a thriving colony of 127,000 souls nestled on a world that reminded everyone of Earth's countryside. Rolling green hills, crystal-clear rivers, and skies that shifted from azure to amber with each sunset. The colonists had volunteered to test new farming techniques that could feed billions back home. They were farmers, scientists, teachers, and children. They were humanity's future, growing in the fertile soil of hope. Rodriguez pressed his palm against the observation deck's reinforced window as the planet came into view. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. Where New Haven's lights should have twinkled like scattered stars across the continents, there was only darkness. The orbital stations that should have been bustling with activity hung silent and lifeless in space. But worst of all, across the planet's surface, vast patches of land glowed with an eerie purple radiation that seemed to pulse like a dying heartbeat. Back on Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Situation Room beneath the Terran Defense Command headquarters. The holographic display showed the first reconnaissance images from Rodriguez's ship, and each new frame that materialized felt like another nail driven into her heart. She had helped plan New Haven's establishment. She had reviewed the colonist applications personally, and somewhere in that devastated world, her daughter Maya lay buried under radioactive ash. Maya had been 26, a brilliant botanist who believes that plants could teach humans how to survive anywhere in the universe. She had called her mother just 2 weeks ago, excited about a breakthrough in crop adaptation that could revolutionize human expansion. Now she was gone, along with every dream she had ever shared and every tomorrow she would never see. The preliminary reports painted a picture that defied understanding. The colony's defensive systems had never been activated. No distress signals had been transmitted. The destruction had happened so quickly that most residents never knew what hit them. Whatever had attacked New Haven possessed technology that could obliterate an entire world in minutes while leaving the planet itself largely intact. Dr. Elizabeth Wang, Earth's leading xenoarchaeologist, studied the energy readings from her station in the corner of the room. Her face was pale as she turned to address the assembled military leaders and politicians. The weapon signatures were unlike anything in humanity's databases. The energy pattern suggested a weapon that could destabilize matter at the molecular level, turning living tissue to ash while leaving inorganic materials untouched. But what troubled Wang most was not the technology itself, but its precision. This was not a random attack or a weapons test. Someone had deliberately chosen New Haven, deliberately chosen to kill every human on that world while leaving the infrastructure largely intact. This was genocide disguised as a message. The investigation team that followed Rodriguez found evidence that chilled them to the core. Hidden in the ruins of the colony's communication center, protected by layers of hardened storage media, they discovered intercepted alien transmissions. The messages were encrypted, but humanity's best cryptographers worked around the clock to break the codes. When they finally succeeded, the truth was worse than anyone had imagined. The transmissions revealed communications between multiple alien species, coordinating what they called a cleansing operation. New Haven had been targeted not for its resources or strategic value, but because its agricultural research was advancing too quickly. The aliens feared that human expansion would eventually threaten their own territories. Admiral Chen read the translated messages in her private office, each word feeling like a physical blow. The aliens referred to humans as the rapid breed and expressed concern about humanity's aggressive colonization patterns. They had studied human history, learned about humanity's wars and expansion, and decided that the species needed to be contained before it became a galactic threat. The decision to destroy New Haven had been made by a coalition calling itself the Hegemony, comprised of 12 different alien species who had dominated this region of the galaxy for millennia. To them, humans were upstart newcomers who needed to be taught their place. The colony's destruction was intended as a warning, a demonstration of what would happen to any human settlement that grew too large or advanced too quickly. But the aliens had made a fundamental error in their understanding of human nature. They had assumed that the loss of one colony would make humanity retreat, would make them more cautious and compliant. They had studied human wars but had failed to understand human determination. They had learned about human expansion but had missed the crucial element of human loyalty to their own kind. In the weeks following New Haven's discovery, Earth's political landscape transformed overnight. The Peace Coalition, which had dominated interstellar policy for decades, found itself facing a population demanding answers and action. Protests filled the streets of every major city. Parents clutched photos of children who had died light years from home. Veterans of humanity's early space conflicts emerged from retirement, offering their services to a cause that had become deeply personal to every human alive. Chen found herself at the center of a storm she had never wanted to face. As Earth's senior military advisor, she was tasked with developing response options for the Terran Council. The politicians wanted measured responses, diplomatic protests, and economic sanctions. They spoke of international law and the importance of maintaining humanity's reputation as a peaceful species. But Chen had seen the reconnaissance footage. She had read the alien communications. She understood that this was not a situation that could be resolved through strongly worded diplomatic notes. The hegemony had declared war on humanity's future, and they would continue their cleansing operations until humans accepted permanent second-class status in their own galaxy. In her presentation to the Terran Council, Chen laid out the brutal mathematics of the situation. New Haven was not an isolated incident. Intelligence suggested that at least 6 other human settlements had been quietly eliminated over the past decade, their disappearances attributed to equipment failures or natural disasters. The hegemony had been systematically pruning human expansion, while Earth remained ignorantly optimistic about interstellar relations. The debate that followed would later be remembered as the moment humanity chose its destiny among the stars. Some council members argued for restraint, fearing that military action would provoke even greater retaliation. Others demanded immediate response, but lacked the will to commit to the scale of action that the situation required. Chen stood before the assembled leaders and spoke with the quiet authority of someone who had already counted the cost of her words. She proposed activating Protocol Lazarus, a contingency plan that had been developed in the aftermath of humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. It was a plan that had never been intended for use, a worst-case scenario that assumed humanity would one day face an existential threat among the stars. Protocol Lazarus was more than a military response. It was a complete transformation of human industrial capacity, turning the entire Sol system into a weapons factory. Every shipyard, every mining operation, every manufacturing facility would be converted to military production. Humanity would build a fleet so large and so powerful that no alien coalition would ever again consider humans an acceptable target. The vote was close, decided by a single ballot cast by an elderly councilman whose grandson had died on New Haven. As the results were announced, Chen felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a mantle she had never wanted but could not refuse to wear. Within hours of the vote, activation codes were transmitted to every human facility throughout the Sol system. Automated systems that had lain dormant for decades suddenly came online. Construction blueprints that existed only in heavily encrypted databases began downloading to factory floors across human space. The greatest industrial mobilization in human history had begun. From the asteroid mining stations of the belt to the orbital factories around Jupiter's moons, humanity's machinery awakened like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. The plan called for the construction of 500,000 dreadnought-class warships, each one a fortress capable of laying waste to entire star systems. It was a number so large that it seemed impossible, but Chen had learned long ago that impossibility was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. As the first construction reports filtered back to Earth, Chen stood once again at her office window, looking up at the stars that had seemed so friendly just weeks ago. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had murdered her daughter were continuing their lives, confident that their message had been received and that humanity would retreat into acceptable obscurity. They would learn differently soon enough. The Iron Symphony. The transformation of human space began with a sound that had not been heard for generations. The deep, resonant hum of industrial machinery operating at maximum capacity. Across the Sol system, facilities that had been designed for peaceful production retooled themselves for war. The asteroid belt, once a quiet region of mining operations and research stations, became a hive of activity as automated systems carved raw materials from ancient rocks and fed them into fabrication plants that worked without rest. Admiral Chen established her command center aboard the newly constructed EHS Retribution, the first of the new Dreadnought class to roll out of the Mars orbital yards. The ship was more than 3 kilometers long, its hull bristling with weapons systems that incorporated the most advanced human technology. But it was not the ship's firepower that impressed her most. It was the name etched into its titanium steel hull in letters that could be seen from orbit. Maya Chen, along with the names of 50,000 other New Haven colonists. Each of the 500,000 ships under construction would carry the names of the dead, transforming the fleet from a mere military force into a memorial that could lay waste to worlds. The psychological impact on the construction crews was immediate and profound. These were not just ships being built, they were monuments to murdered innocents, and every welder, every engineer, every technician understood that they were crafting instruments of justice with their own hands. The intelligence teams working under Chen's command had not been idle during the months of construction. Deep space reconnaissance probes, nearly invisible to alien sensors, had mapped hegemony territories and identified key installations. What they found confirmed humanity's worst fears about their galactic neighbors. The hegemony was not merely a defensive alliance, but an aggressive expansionist empire that had been systematically eliminating younger species for thousands of years. Humanity was not their first target, nor would they be their last. Archaeological evidence suggested that at least 27 different civilizations had been cleansed over the millennia, their worlds left empty and their technologies absorbed into hegemony databases. Dr. Wang's xenoarchaeological team had made another disturbing discovery while analyzing the alien communications. References to something called the Harvest suggested that the hegemony did not simply destroy younger civilizations, but preserve specimens and technologies for study. New Haven's agricultural research had not been eliminated to prevent human expansion. It had been stolen to enhance hegemony food production capabilities. This revelation transformed Chen's understanding of the enemy they faced. The aliens were not motivated by fear or defensive concerns, but by predatory opportunism. They viewed younger species the same way humans might view a field of wheat, resources to be harvested when convenient. The destruction of the colonists had been incidental to the theft of their research, making the crime even more callous and calculated. As the construction program entered its 6th month, the first combat trials began. Test flights of the new dreadnoughts revealed capabilities that exceeded even Chen's optimistic projections. Human engineering, driven by grief and determination, had produced weapons systems that outperformed anything in the known galaxy. The ships were fast enough to outrun most alien vessels, heavily armored enough to survive direct hits from the weapons that had destroyed New Haven, and armed with enough firepower to reduce entire enemy fleets to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. But it was not just the individual ships that made the fleet formidable. It was their ability to coordinate as a unified force. Human artificial intelligence systems, advanced beyond anything the hegemony possessed, could link hundreds of thousands of ships into a single tactical entity. The fleet could fight as one mind controlling 500,000 bodies, achieving levels of coordination and precision that no biological crew could match. The first test of this capability came when hegemony scouts, investigating the sudden increase in human industrial activity, stumbled upon a construction fleet in the outer reaches of the Sol system. 3 alien vessels, each larger than anything humanity had previously encountered, approached the shipyards with apparent confidence in their overwhelming technological advantage. They lasted exactly 47 seconds. The response was not coordinated by human commanders, but by the AI systems that had been monitoring alien approach vectors since the moment they entered the system. 12 dreadnoughts, fresh from the construction bays and not yet fully crewed, engaged the alien ships with a precision that would have been impossible for human pilots. The enemy vessels were dissected rather than destroyed, their weapons disabled, their engines crippled, their life support systems selectively targeted to render the crews unconscious rather than dead. When the brief engagement ended, 3 alien ships hung helpless in space, while human boarding parties secured them for intelligence gathering. The aliens inside, members of a species that call themselves the Orcs, were among the galaxy's most feared warriors. They had participated in dozens of cleansing operations over the centuries, including the destruction of New Haven. The interrogation that followed provided Chen with the intelligence she needed to plan humanity's response. The Orcs revealed the locations of 12 major hegemony strongholds, the command structure of their military forces, and most importantly, the schedule for their next planned cleansing operation. Another human colony, Haven's Hope, was scheduled for elimination in just 3 months. Chen made her decision with the cold calculation that had made her humanity's foremost military strategist. Haven's Hope would not fall. Instead, it would become the bait for a trap that would introduce the galaxy to humanity's new capabilities. The hegemony would arrive expecting to find defenseless farmers and scientists. Instead, they would encounter the full fury of humanity's reborn war machine. The deployment of the human fleet began with a deception operation that would have made Sun Tzu proud. Publicly, Earth announced that it was evacuating Haven's Hope and several other outer colonies, citing security concerns following the New Haven incident. Privately, Chen was positioning her forces for the most devastating military ambush in galactic history. As the Hegemony Task Force assembled for what they believed would be another routine cleansing operation, human forces took up positions throughout the target system. The aliens had learned to expect no resistance from human colonies, and their tactical doctrine reflected this assumption. They approached in loose formations, their attention focused on bombardment patterns rather than defensive preparations. The battle, when it came, lasted less than an hour, but would be studied by military historians for centuries. The Hegemony fleet, comprising nearly 1,000 ships from 6 different species, found themselves surrounded by a human force that outnumbered them 500 to 1. But it was not mere numerical superiority that decided the engagement. It was the complete mismatch between alien expectations and human capabilities. The Hegemony commanders had based their tactical planning on humanity's performance in previous conflicts, when human ships were smaller, slower, and less well-armed. They were not prepared for dreadnoughts that could accelerate faster than their own fighters, shields that could absorb their most powerful weapons without significant damage, and AI-directed point defense systems that could track and destroy every missile they fired. More devastating than the technological surprise was the strategic one. The aliens had always fought as individual species temporarily allied for mutual benefit. Coordination between different races was limited. Communication was difficult, and tactical unity was impossible. Humanity fought as a single organism, every ship responding instantly to centralized commands, every weapon firing in perfect coordination with thousands of others. The result was not a battle, but a demonstration. The Hegemony fleet was systematically dismantled, ship by ship, crew by crew, until only a handful of vessels remained intact. These survivors were permitted to escape, not out of mercy, but to ensure that word of humanity's new capabilities would spread throughout hegemony space. As the alien survivors limped back to their home worlds, Chen prepared the message that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. Standing on the bridge of the retribution, with the burning wreckage of the hegemony fleet visible through the main viewports, She activated the galaxy-wide communication array that had been installed in every human dreadnought. Her words, transmitted simultaneously across thousands of star systems, were simple and direct. She identified herself as Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force and announced that humanity was no longer willing to accept the status of prey in their own galaxy. The destruction of New Haven and other human colonies would be answered in kind. Any species that threatened human settlements would face the full might of humanity's war fleet. But Chen's message was not merely a threat. She also offered partnership to species that chose peace over predation. Humanity would defend the innocent and punish the guilty, regardless of their species or origin. The galaxy's age of apex predators was ending, replaced by an era where the strong protected the weak rather than devouring them. As her transmission ended, reports began flooding in from across human space. The 500,000 dreadnoughts were complete, crewed, and ready for deployment. The greatest fleet in galactic history was prepared to enforce humanity's new doctrine. Never again would children die in the darkness between the stars, while their murderers celebrated in the light. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as a minor nuisance were about to learn the price of underestimating a species that had evolved in warfare and emerged from every conflict stronger than before. The galaxy had been dominated by the fear of superior technology for millennia. Now it would be ruled by something far more powerful, the determination of a species that refused to kneel.